voice. Happy Tuesday, besties and bosses. How are you all doing? How's everyone's weekend? How's everyone's week off to? Let me know how all the things are going. If you're watching now or on the replay, I would love to know how you are doing. Especially, I think I've talked with a few clients, and I think this sort of like phase we're in of thinking COVID was done and now maybe it's not so much and people are on lockdown and people aren't. I know there's a lot coming up for everyone, so let me know how you're doing. I always want to have a pulse check-in with this group before we dive into our topic. And as you're watching now or on the replay as well, we're talking team today. I know this is one of those areas, topics that can bring up lots of questions. So if you have a question I don't cover, if you have something you're curious about, if there's something you want to know about how, we do things in my business, I'm always so happy to share. I just don't always know what questions you have. So feel free to throw them here. If they're applicable to what we're talking about, I'll answer them now. If not, we can always do another live stream topic on that. But I want to make sure I am a resource and available to all of you. So let's dive into today's topic. We're talking about the communication skills you can steal from your personal relationships to bring into team. I had to cheat and look at my notes. I'm like, what do we call this topic? As many of you know, well, let me actually give a preface on this before I dive right into the topic, because I think this is actually important to normalize. Something I find comes up for so many of my clients when they're starting to build teams or as they're growing their teams, as they're scaling. And frankly, this is something when I first built my team and I made my first hire and I was, in the building phase and learning all about hiring and leadership and what that meant to lead a team. I think some of the narrative in our minds can be, I don't know what I'm doing. This is not why I started a business. I started a business to do the work I care about and that I love, not to run a team. Maybe I don't need to do this. Maybe it's more hassle than it's work. Oh my gosh, I'm spending so much money. Like, is this even worth it? I think some of the other stories that can come is I don't have an MBA. I don't have leadership training. I didn't take a course on how to run a team. I think there can be quite a lot that comes up around this. And I share that again, not to create a story or to add to a story, but just to normalize how much this comes up for people. Again, many of you know I only do one-on-one work, so I'm really blessed to see the behind the scenes of so many businesses and what comes up for people. So the gift I can give to all of you when we're doing these is just to share. This is normal. This isn't one person who's ever said this to me. This is pretty much anyone who's built a team or grown a team ever has some sort of something like that tends to come up around building a team. So I want to normalize that. That's also why I wanted to do today's live stream and topic, because something I have really found, yes, I have learned so much over the years with having a team as my team has grown and expanded. Many things I have learned simply because, like most of us in business, there's so many things you learn in the process of doing. So I have lots to say about team. I'm very grateful to my team. I love my team. Team, if you're watching now or on the replay, I love you so much. I'm so grateful for my team. My business would literally not be the place it was if it weren't for my team. That's a whole nother conversation. But that feels very worth saying. And I've had to learn a lot. And I know when I made that first hire, I absolutely had the story as well of, I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know if it's worth it. I remember, a mastermind and with multiple six and seven figure business owners, and we have stuff around team and leadership that we do. And I remember my first round in the mastermind, we had some stuff around leadership and kind of our goals around team. And I remember very specifically saying, I want a one-person team. I want it lean and mean. I don't ever want more than one person on my team. It's obviously changed. We have multiple team members. We have between 4 and 5 team members, regular team members who are constantly working in the business, aside from team members like accountants and designers who do like graphics from time to time. So that has changed. But again, I share this just to normalize that because it's so normal. And it is also something that you can so learn, and it's so manageable, doable. And what I want to break down today is something I have really seen to be true is there are so many transferable skills you have from the relationships you have outside of business, from the things you do outside of business that really go into all of your business, but particularly with hiring and managing a team and communicating with your team, which is such a huge part of having a team and being able to efficiently, or to be able to lead them in a way that helps you efficiently run your business and have your team support you in making money in your business. So many skills that are really transferable. And I find for my clients, and if you are here, most of you are passion driven, most of you are heart centered, most of you are people. And because of that, you already have incredible communication skills and people skills, and you have a lot of leadership skills that I think you might not even be aware of. So I want to say that, and to say, even if you don't have an MBA, even if you didn't take a course on leadership, I bet there's a lot more that you know that you might not be trusting. So that is the preface of today's live stream. And what I want to share is going through this lens of stuff you probably already know that you can borrow from outside relationships. We're going to highlight some key communication skills, the mindset and approach I teach my clients when it comes to team that I take with my team, some of those key communication skills you can steal from your other relationships. And then I'm going to share a tool that is actually a relationship tool for communication that I find really, really valuable with teams, so you kind of know what to communicate, what not to communicate for, again, so that you can really help them help you. Many of you know, or maybe you don't know, I'm getting married in a few weeks, so my mind is very much using the lens of marriage and relationship as a focal point and just as a filter to see things through. And it's really great because there's so much in our business that is, I never want to say we're married to our businesses, but I think there's a lot of overlap there. And one of the things to start here with, really with the mindset and approach I take when it comes to team, is really taking the approach and the mindset of partnership, which is when you think about relationships outside of business, when you think about getting married to someone, when you think about dating someone and building a long-term relationship, really so often for most of us, we're looking for partnership. And I find taking the mindset of partnership in a romantic relationship, personally for me, works really well. The same thing with team. And I say this as a mindset, and I think this might be one of those things where it's like, yeah, duh, of course it's a partnership. However, I also find so often with team, especially when you're new to business and maybe you're making your first hire, I think sometimes the mindset can be more, I'm just paying for someone to figure things out for me, or I'm just paying to get my hours back, or I'm just paying, trying to think of what some of the other really common things are. I don't have to deal with this. And while, yes, of course, you get to outsource the things that maybe aren't your zone of genius or aren't your favorite thing to do, or that don't make sense for you to do in your business or aren't your, where you should be putting your time and energy, I think that is a very different mindset that creates a lot of separation. It's sort of like in a romantic relationship, if I was like, I'm just gonna get married so that someone else can handle all the stuff I don't like to do and make me feel better when I don't feel good. It's like probably not gonna make, I'm not a relationship coach, but I'm just saying that's probably not gonna make for the best relationship ever, right? It's going to probably be a lot more fulfilling relationship, probably serve both of us in the marriage more if I'm coming at it from the lens of partnership in terms of how can we build something together that serves both of us. And so I think with team, taking that lens and approach really shifts the way you think about hiring and think about leading and think about what you're doing in business and even the expectations you set. And I think it can also really support team members. This is something, who did the research on this? It might be Adam Grant. He's usually the one who does this kind of research. There's quite a lot of research on human core needs, psychological needs, and when it comes to team and just people overall, but in businesses and corporations, and autonomy is such an important need, but autonomy comes from also being in partnership. You can't give someone autonomy on your team if you're not also in a partnership where you can trust them enough to do so. Autonomy is very different than saying, just go off and do your own thing and I'm not gonna be there to support you or to give you guidance. So I'm going down a rabbit hole because I like to do that. First lens here that I would really invite you to think about when we're talking about what's the mindset and approach is taking that approach of partnership. And with that, when it comes to hiring, something that I was taught from my mentor, Lacey Seitz, I'll always give her a shout out, she's brilliant, but one of the things she taught me that I really think about when I think about partnership, when I think about team, is really hiring first and foremost, thinking through partnership and values. Meaning, when we look at bringing on a new team member, before we look at, obviously someone, if there's a specific skill like, copywriting or podcast editing, they need to have the skill set, but we really look at assuming people have the same skill set. When it comes down to who am I bringing on my team, I'm really looking at values and looking at, are we a value match? Similarly to getting married or to dating. While people on paper might have a lot of similar qualities, ultimately what's going to help you have a better marriage or relationship or partnership long-term is being on the same page with your values, right? You can teach someone things about you, you can learn hobbies and lots of things together, but if those core values aren't overlapped and you're completely on different pages, generally speaking, that's going to cause a little bit more friction in a relationship. right? Does that make sense for everyone? So with team, I find when it comes to hiring, if you're taking this lens of partnership and thinking through the lens of what makes a great partnership, how can I treat this like a partnership? How can I even hire from that lens? Using that filter of values can really help you start a foundation, start to date a team member that you're going to grow and build a foundation with and a relationship with over time if you start with values first and really use that as a filtering process. The reason I say that too, and this comes back to communication, if you think about relationships outside of business, if you think about friendships or dating, we generally don't start a relationship completely communicating, knowing all the things, knowing exactly what someone's likes, dislikes, buttons, fears, all the things are, right? We build a relationship over time. We build and strengthen and deepen our communication over time. We don't assume someone we just started dating can read our mind and knows everything about us, right? That's why we date someone. That's why we date someone, generally speaking, before we get married. But if we want to keep dating someone, we want to make sure, we want to keep checking in, are those values aligned? And then allow that relationship to build over time. It's the same thing with team. Again, the reason I'm saying this is because I think so often the mindset is flipped around where it's like, I hope this will become a partnership, but I'm really hoping someone can come in, read my mind, know everything in advance, know how to communicate with me perfectly, know everything I want, know how to do things for me, know all the answers. I don't really care if they have the same values, if they can just take this off my plate. And we can see how that's a very short-sighted relationship mindset instead of the partnership mindset, which kind of inverses this and really looks at values first and building that relationship and trust over time. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have questions. So with this, I wanted to go through a couple of those communication, I'm calling them communication skills, but I think these are skills you inherently have in your relationships. You just might not notice these are things that are transferable, that really serve you in business. And I know because I talk with clients about this so often, a lot of the stuff we're doing as clients are scaling, so often it's like mindset and team is the main stuff we're talking about. And I think with this, sometimes we just forget that the stuff we already know, this shows up in our business as well, and we can apply it to business, particularly with team. Team it's relationships, like nothing else. And again, I know if you're watching this and if you're here, you're already great at relationships. So the first thing here that kind of goes with what we were chatting about earlier, if you think through the lens of partnership, and if we kind of use this dating to get married, like you're dating, you're gonna date for a while until you get married, and like that deepens the partnership. If we're using that lens, what I said earlier is really then through this, understanding we can't assume someone can read our mind, right? We can't assume when we're communicating that someone, just because they're a social media manager, an expert, and they might understand social media and they might know all the things about Instagram, that doesn't mean that they know your wants and your needs and how you want something done in your process and your preference. And I think one of the places a lot of miscommunication can happen with team is assuming because someone is an expert in something and you're hiring them, that they know exactly what you want and they can run off and execute and do that for you. And maybe there are unicorns like that out there. I don't know. I feel like my team is like literally unicorns right now, and they still can't read my mind. They are absolutely experts at what they do, but they don't know how I personally want something done, my personal preferences, my personal way of doing things. Messages popping up, unless I communicate with them. Hey Lenita, good evening. Nice to see you, beautiful. Well, see you. I can like see your little photo there. Nice to have you here. So my team, no matter how brilliant, unicorn, amazing they are, no matter how much of an expert they are, they can't read my mind, just like I can't read my client's mind. I'm great at what I do. That doesn't mean I can read my client's mind. My clients, I literally ask them to let me know what they like, what they don't dislike. There's a feedback question on their form with me because I can't read their mind unless they tell me. I just don't know, unless they communicate with me. So it's the same with team. And so one of the approaches, and this is the same if you're dating, right? If you start dating someone, my fiance will tell you right now, he can't read my mind. I think sometimes he can read my mind, but he doesn't know what I like, what I want, what I need in any moment unless I specifically communicate it. And the more I can over communicate what I want, what I need, the more I'll use my fiance as an example, the more we're gonna have better communication, the more he's gonna know how to make me happy in our relationship, the more I'm gonna know how to make him happy in our relationship, the more ease and the less friction we're gonna have. The more I go around expecting him just to know everything and like know what I want and just to like make me so happy and surprise me with things and just like be able to mind read, the more friction we're gonna have. The more I'm gonna be disappointed, the more he's gonna be frustrated, the more he's gonna be like, oh my gosh, woman, I am trying, and like, just tell me what you want. He would never speak like that, but that is my dramatized example. It's the same with team. So a mindset here, if we're using this partnership mindset with team, something I like to remember is my team can't read my mind. It's my job to not only communicate, but to over communicate with them. And something when I bring on a new team member, one of the first things I tell them is I'm going to over communicate everything. This is something I was taught, and this is something I do in my personal relationship. And I see it as just such a gift to have for that partnership. And what I explain is, and this is because I want us to build a partnership. I want you around for the long term, right? Same with my fiance and our marriage. Like, this is for the long term. And I know if this is for the long term, the best thing we can do is over communicate needs, wants, preferences, so we can both be on the same page. And so the same thing goes with your team. So this is one of the first things I would say, you already know how to do this. There is somewhere you have a personal relationship where you already know if I over communicate with this person, I get my needs met. Or if I expect them to mind read, I don't get my needs met. You can take that into team and see the same exact approach happens. What I would say is the only like big difference is oftentimes with team in online businesses is we're working remotely. So I would say there's even more of an reason and incentive to over communicate, because oftentimes it's through Messenger, or we're not always having face-to-face conversation. So tonality can be missed, a lot can be missed that way. So I would say it's that much more important to over communicate, especially when you're building a team and people are getting to know you. Leaniness is nice to see and hear you. Hearts to you. So let me know if this is resonating and making sense. Something I share with clients quite a bit, and I literally just shared this with a client yesterday, so it's very relevant, is just really the thought process too. If you think about taking the mindset of team like a partnership, like you would a romantic partnership or a friend partnership, understanding that any time you put into that partnership and communication and building the relationship is so valuable. And generally speaking, we pour more effort and communication at the start of a partnership to benefit the long term of a partnership. And so I say that because generally speaking, if you're gonna hire and bring on team members, it's generally far more communication and far more work and effort at the start. And I think this is a place where people unintentionally get frustrated. They're like, wait, I thought this was just like, I just hire someone and they can just like run off and read my mind and do all the things. And I think that's where people get really frustrated, instead of, no, think about any relationship in your life. If you're making, I have a new friend that I met in the city here. We're building a new friendship, right? That is a relationship, and it's more, we have to communicate more at the beginning to get to know one another better than the friendships I've had for 10 years. The friendships I've had for 10 years, there's so much more ease and fluidity with the conversation. They can read my mind, so to say, a little bit more, but not because they're mind readers, because we've put in that time to over communicate over and over and over again over the years. Whereas a new friendship, we have to over communicate a little bit more so we can build that partnership together. Same thing goes for team. All right, I'm hitting you all over the head with that, but I hope that makes sense. It's one of the biggest, I mean, I don't know, my team will have to tell me if I think they appreciate it, but I think it's one of the biggest things that really supports me with my team, and I see it makes such a difference for my clients as well with their team. Okay, the next thing here that is something you can borrow from your relationships outside of business and bring it into your team and leadership is this concept and idea that the way I think about it with partnership is trust goes both ways. So what I think about that, I'm trying to like think about it, there's a couple of nuances here, but let me just repeat that. Trust goes both ways, meaning if you want to be in partnership with team and you want to be able to trust your team, you also, like, trust goes both ways. So you trusting your team also means you have to create a space for them to trust you, right? Trust goes both ways. If you think about a romantic relationship, so often if you want to feel either trusted or you want to be able to trust your partner, the easiest place to start is with yourself. Like, can you trust yourself, and can you trust, like, are you creating a space for them to trust you? It's so often, it's sort of like we have to give what we want to get. And I think that's very much the case with trust. So if we're looking, especially with online businesses, a lot of times, again, teams are remote, and that can kick up, I think, I don't want to call them trust issues, but I think that can kick up trust question marks for people all the time. And what I want to offer here is that reminder that trust does go both ways, and this is something you can see in your relationships out of business and bring into team. In fact, for those of you who know anything about different philosophies around relationship, there's two theories that really come into play here that I think are quite important actually when it comes to the communication and your team building. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of object permanence and separation anxiety, and then attachment theory. So object permanence and separation anxiety, I'll try to give the Cliff's Notes version here, but it's essentially the research and the philosophy that when kids are little, they start to learn over time as they mature that they can, objects are permanent, meaning this glass of water, even if you leave the room, the glass of water is still sitting here on the desk. If you're a baby and you have a toy and someone puts that toy under the blanket, the toy didn't disappear or go away, it's still there. And the way they've done studies around this and the way kids kind of lean into this and learn this and adapt this in their response in terms of if they cry or how quickly they can soothe around this has a lot to do with their separation, how much separation anxiety they have, the anxiety they have when their parents leave or when they're separated from something. And I think this plays a lot into attachment theory. Again, I'm trying to give the brief Cliff Notes here, but attachment theory is really how there's a great book called Attached on this, but that there's three main forms of attachment. There's a secure attachment, there is avoidant attachment, and anxious attachment. It's the way we attach in relationships with other people. And secure attachment it's a healthier form of attachment, which really is this object permanence. And this trust goes both ways, right? This trust that when someone's not there, when you can't see them on your computer screen, that they're still there doing what they said they would. A lot of secure relationship too is it's safe to share emotions and to share thoughts and to share feelings, and it's really being attached in a relationship without the anxiety and without the avoidance. Again, this is I'm butchering this because I'm trying to say this succinctly so we don't go off on a tangent, but kind of going back to the communication skills here, I think, and just the skills you can take from those personal relationships and bring into team. I think what you can start to notice is, what is my attachment style? How do I show up in relationships outside of business? When I don't hear from a friend for a day, do I still trust that friend is still my friend? When I text someone, if I don't hear back from them in 2 minutes, do I still trust that they're there on the other side? And of course, they're going to text me back when they have a moment. We think about dating. This is very applicable to dating. If I'm dating someone, right, it's probably going to, trust goes both ways. If I send a message and they don't respond right away, if I can trust, of course they're going to reply to me when they can. They must just be busy and it's not a whole big thing. They can also trust me on the other side, that if they write something, I'm going to respond when I can, and I'm not if I can't. Try not to make this a dating live stream, but the same goes with team, because I think what can happen with, again, remote teams when you're using different ways to communicate, I think sometimes anxiety can pop up. I see this with clients quite a bit when they don't hear from a team member right away, or they've paid someone for the first time. It's are they going to take my money and run, or are they actually going to do this thing? And so what I would offer here is just looking at some of these theories, these ways we form bonds and attach and have relationships outside of business, and seeing what serves me outside of business. How do I connect outside of business? How do I communicate outside of business? How do I create that trust and that object permanence outside of business? How can I bring that in here with team? And, or if I am feeling some of that anxiety, or I don't want to deal with that, how does that mirror maybe what I experience outside of business? So I can see this is just overall an opportunity to create some more security around the relationship and trust moving both ways, instead of this means there's something wrong with my team, or I don't know how to run a team, or I suck at leadership. And I think that's the big piece we want to untangle here, is not getting into that narrative and just seeing oftentimes when there's a challenge presenting itself, there's usually something else that is coming up that we can identify and work through. It's usually not the thing that's presenting on the surface. Hopefully that made sense, because I was trying to cram a lot of theory into that, but I find if you can just kind of take the communication piece there that I was going to highlight it as a bullet, is trust goes both ways, and playing with that in terms of the communication and the relationship and partnership with your team. Okay. So the next one here, and let me know if you have questions. Now we're on the replay. Always so want to make sure this is landing, and so that this can specifically serve you with your team, and or if you are a team member on the other side, how that is for you. So the next one here that you can steal from your personal relationships, this is actually something my fiance and I have kind of as a rule in our partnership for our communication, for the way we connect. And it's something I have brought into the way I see my partnerships with my team members and the way I think about team, that kind of goes to the trust goes both ways, and some of that secure attachment piece we were just talking about, that I find is really serving on both sides. And that's really adopting the mindset and the belief that the other person has your best interests at heart. So I'm trying to think like how to best describe this. With my fiance, the way this goes is we try to both see each other's, like, both of us are like, we're in partnership, we're on the same team, we have each other's best interests at heart. Meaning if someone does something, if either one of us does something that like maybe irritates the other person or frustrates the other person or something we don't like, instead of like, why do they do that? Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that. Or like getting frustrated with it, it's a lot easier if like, well, I know this person is on my team. I know that they have my best interests at heart. I know then that this isn't about me or to me or trying to attack me. This is just something I probably need to communicate that they think I like, or that they aren't aware of how it affects me, or there's something for us to talk about here. And it really can change the way you can then communicate about what's going on. And the same is true for a team. What I really believe is if I'm bringing on team members and we're filtering for values, right? And we're taking the partnership approach and we're over communicating and we're making that part of how we're building communication over time. And we're like, trust is being built both ways. I have to believe everyone on my team has my interests and my business's interests at heart. Meaning, if they make a mistake, if they have a human moment, if something happens, if they say something that maybe rubs me the wrong way, it's so much easier if I can pause and remember, but they have my best interest and my business's interest at heart, which means this is simply a miscommunication. This either means like it is a mistake, and then I can over communicate from the lens of, I know you're doing your best. I know this came from a good place. Here's something I would prefer, and here's why. Instead of, why did you do that? Or that's not how we do that, or this is wrong. Same with if someone has a human moment, because everyone has human moments, right? On both sides. I have human moments. I hope my team will give me grace when I do, and vice versa. If I know and I believe and I trust goes both ways, right? That my team has my best interest at heart, my business best interest at heart, then I'm not taking personally when someone has a human moment, or if someone forgets something, or if someone's late on something. Obviously, it's different if there's repeat patterns that are happening that aren't serving the business, but that's not what we're talking about here. And it makes it so much easier to communicate, and to communicate really neutrally, and to problem solve as a partnership, as a team, when you're taking that lens and approach. It just kind of cools everything down, but it also helps you to see that oftentimes a lot of things we think are problems really aren't problems. It's just an opportunity to communicate or to help someone see what you want. And the same thing, if I use my fiance as an example, the same thing is true with us. We are by no means perfect, but when because we take this approach and this belief set, we always have each other's best interests at heart, we're on the same team, we're in partnership, it helps diffuse a lot of what could otherwise become a problem or a fight over nothing, because we can actually then just communicate really neutrally when there is something that, maybe isn't our favorite thing. So same with team. So hopefully that makes sense. Y'all are very quiet, so feel free, questions, reflections, all of it. Otherwise, I will keep going, because I have two more here, and then the tool I wanted to share with you, which is a relationship tool. So you can use it in your relationships as well. And then one you can use with your team, because again, teams are relationships. It's how we do one thing is how we do all things. I mean, that's not always exactly true, but in this case, there's a lot of parallel. And again, a lot of crossover, transferable communication skills and relationship building skills. Okay, so the next thing here that I find is so true for relationships outside of business that really is true for team as well, is that vulnerability connects people. I know you know this if you're heart-centered, and if you have any relationship, romantic friendship outside of business, the more vulnerably you share with someone, right? The more you feel connected to that person. Yes, we can have a vulnerability hangover. Yes, there are, places where we might not be as vulnerable, but I think we could probably all agree that vulnerability is something that connects. And what I find so often happens is when it comes to business and when it comes to hiring and building a team and leading a team, I think sometimes almost like the narrative in the brain can be like, well, now I'm supposed to be businessy. Now I'm supposed to put on my business hat, and I'm supposed to be perfect, and I'm supposed to be a leader, and I'm supposed to be running a business, and if I'm running a really successful business that's making a lot of money, I'm supposed to show up like a robot. And that bosses and leaders, they're like bitches or assholes, or they don't have emotion, or I don't know. I think society, I think movies, I think there's just a lot of noise that gets put into the brain subconsciously that creates this story that to effectively lead, to effectively run a business, to effectively be a business owner, vulnerability has no place. And what I want to offer here is that is such bullshit. That's just not true at all. I quite honestly think that's why we're seeing more and more women in leadership positions in businesses, like big businesses and corporations, because not that men can't be vulnerable, of course they can, but I think oftentimes women feel a little bit more comfortable being vulnerable, and I think just hormonally we are in touch with our emotions in a different way. So again, I'm not saying men cannot be vulnerable or tapped in with their emotion, but I do think we're seeing this in many big corporations and businesses, and the same is true for your business. If you are a man, you can embrace your vulnerability as well. But it's so crazy to think, like, it doesn't actually make sense to think, if we're thinking about what builds a business, and if we're thinking about what really cements a team and helps a team grow and helps a team support you, we're looking at relationship building, period, right? We're really looking at relationship building, connection, communication. That's what builds your business. That's what brings in money. That's what brings in clients. That's also what builds your team and has your team want to support you. Like, it kind of comes back to these really core fundamental pieces of relationship building, vulnerability being one of them. So it's kind of silly to think then suddenly when you have a team that would go out the window, and suddenly this means become a robot, don't have feelings, don't have emotionality, don't be vulnerable, don't share. Of course, there are, I think, things that aren't relevant for a team to know about, just like in personal relationships, right? If you were starting to date someone, you are going to be vulnerable and share things in a different way than you would someone who you've been dating for 3 months, 3 years, 20 years, right? I really think someone has to earn your vulnerability, and there are places we share things vulnerably that we wouldn't share other things vulnerably. And I think sometimes we think vulnerability means share all the things all the time and just, spew. And I think you get to choose that. But what I really mean here is that vulnerability connects in terms of you get to be yourself. Like, I don't necessarily mean vulnerable like you need to tell them your darkest, deepest secrets. They're not your therapist. Your team is not your therapist. Just like someone you're dating is not your therapist. But you get to show up and be yourself. And you don't have to show up and be a robot. And there is not some like weird like business person you're supposed to turn into to have a team. And just like dating, the more you can vulnerably just be yourself, the more you attract someone who you're gonna have a great relationship with. I believe the same is true with team. Right? The more you can show up with team, just being a normal human and vulnerably allowing yourself to connect, the more you're going to have a team that grows with you, that wants to support you, that gets to know you, the more ease you bring. One of the things whenever we bring on a new team member, something I've started doing is I like to, this feels very vulnerable for me, but one of the things I like to do is share, essentially, here are some of my flaws and here are some of the things I'm not so great at that I need your support with. I just want you to know. Like, I'm not perfect, and this is also why I'm hiring you. And something I always tell team is, you're an expert at what you do. I'm an expert at what I do. I don't expect you to be an expert in my stuff, and vice versa. Here are some of my challenges. Here's some of my humanness. I'm a bit of a control freak. I'm a little OCD. I'm a little too detail oriented. I can be a little extra. And I will share those things. Yes, it's a little vulnerable. But I think what's really nice is when you do that, you create, again, trust goes both ways, right? You can create that connection. You can create a team that gets to know you where you're communicating, but it also helps your team members to realize they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to show up without any flaws. They're not expected to know and do all the things. And it can also help you show up and communicate when you're running your team, leading your team more with more ease, because you're not then trying to put yourself into some strange straitjacket every time you communicate or ask for something. Hopefully that makes sense. I feel like I could almost go off on a random tangent there. I will give one more thought here, because this was in my notes and this feels important, because this is so transferable as a communication skill from personal relationships to business. And this, even if you don't have a team, this goes for with clients and with content. I think the more you can be willing to embrace your humanness and your so-called flaws and see them as simply a part of who you are, and share that, and as opposed to now I have to try to figure out how to hide them or be something different, the more overall ease there is. And this is something I'm sure everyone watching now on the replay, you can think about so many relationships where that's true. The people you can just show up and vulnerably be yourself around, probably the easiest time you ever have. The people I'm sure everyone has that family member where they feel like they have to put on something special for them and behave super proper. I don't know if y'all have that. We definitely have. I've experienced that in the past. And I mean, you probably feel like you don't have the same connection, and you probably feel a lot of stress, and there probably feels like you can't communicate well. That same concept is what is true in your business on all levels, but particularly with team, right? And if we go back to the beginning of the live stream where we were talking about that mindset, really thinking about this through the lens of partnership, right? The more you can allow yourself to be who you are and to communicate that, the more ease there's going to be, the more there's going to be in that partnership. And again, vulnerability does not mean you have to share all the dark, horrible, traumatic things. That's not what we're talking about. It's more, can you allow yourself to just not feel like you have to be perfectly buttoned up version of whatever your movie version of a business owner is, because that's just not a thing. Okay, the last one here, and then we'll chat about the tool, which it's so simple and I love it so much. It will work for your personal relationships as well, for your romantic relationships. I love it. But the last one here for the communication piece is transparency is magic. So this is similar to the vulnerability piece, but it's a little bit nuanced. Transparency is magic, and transparency is different than telling someone everything. So very, very similar to what we were talking about. And really this idea of inviting you with team, the same way you would if you were dating someone and you were getting to know them. You would have discernment around how transparent to be about something. But just like what we were talking about at the beginning of the live stream, you wouldn't expect them to read your mind, right? If you were going to build a partnership with someone and date them over time, you would expect the only way they're going to know your likes and your dislikes and your preferences and what you want is to be transparent and to communicate that. I think we can agree with that. And you would also have discernment around, we just started dating, we're on date one. I probably don't need to tell them all the things. I probably don't need to tell them about, very private preferences. I might want to tell them I don't eat gluten or whatever that is, right? I should probably be transparent about that. And that transparency and you would have discernment about what would be appropriate to be transparent about as time goes on, right? Everyone here, you already have these skills. These are such transferable skills. The same comes with team. So I think with team, seeing transparency is magic, the more you can simply be transparent. Remember we were talking about trust goes both ways. I think transparency is something that creates a lot of trust. It's something in my personal relationship, when I think about my fiance, we kind of have this, I don't really like the word rule, but we have an agreement that we're both going to do our best to always be transparent, even if it's uncomfortable, because transparency is magic and it builds trust both ways. If I know my fiance, his name is Eric, we can call him Eric. I know Eric is always going to be transparent with me. I don't have to sit around second guessing or worrying or maybe he thinks something else or maybe this is happening or right. I just know, no, if he's thinking something and it's important for me to know, which I'm going to share the tool for when you should share those things and to help with discernment, he's going to let me know. Vice versa, if part of my agreement is I'm always going to be transparent, what I'm thinking about, what I'm feeling with the tool I will share. Then on the other side, if like, maybe if I have a migraine and my energy is a little lower, Eric doesn't have to wonder, well, is she actually secretly like harboring resentment against me or upset about something? Because he can trust I will transparently share that. Hopefully this is making sense. Jeanette said, I was told that every achievement starts with the decision to try. Ignorance destroys so many opportunities. I was, I think this is, I think we just got is that a spam message? Okay, well, we'll have to delete that later. Jeanette, wait, what is this? Yeah, so we just got a spam message, y'all. So we'll deal with that afterwards. It happens. It's actually really fun that this happened live. Y'all, that happens. And then we block the person and they get kicked out of the group, and that is no big deal. We're not gonna worry about that now. But I think all of you can see how that transparency piece works in a romantic relationship, and that is something you can take as a transferable communication skill into team. It is so the same with team. If team can trust, if I let team know, hey, I'm gonna be super transparent, I'm gonna over communicate, I'm going to let you know my likes and dislikes, because I want us to be able to communicate, not because you're in trouble, not because there's a problem here, but because I really want us to have a long-term partnership, work together for a long time, and I just know that this is the easiest way to do that. It's a lot easier to receive feedback as a team member, and vice versa, but it creates that trust both ways. It really creates magic, because then ideally, I don't know, I'm not one of my team members, but I'm assuming ideally they know if something's going on, I'm just going to communicate it transparently. I'm not gonna like secretly be stewing behind the scenes. And vice versa, I can know the same because I create a space where that is safe as well. So I think this is just one of those, again, transferable communication skills you can borrow from your relationships outside of business to bring to your team that makes such a difference to really help your team help you. Okay, so last but not least, let me know if you have any questions about the transparency. I think one more thing I'll say really quickly with team. I think just with the discernment piece there and what we were talking about with the dating relationship example is just seeing, again, transparency. You're going to have team members who have different roles in your relationship. And so while transparency is important, it's similar to the vulnerability. That doesn't mean, again, that you have to tell someone everything, right? I don't have to tell my fiance every single thought that comes through my brain. I get to have the discernment around what is important to be transparent about. Just like I don't have to vulnerably share every single thing all the time, but both are important in our communication. So same with your team, and especially as your team grows with you, like your relationship is going to grow, but their roles are also going to require different levels of transparency. So hopefully that's important, because I don't want to give the idea that, that it's all the transparency, share all the things, or all the vulnerability. It's really being able to have that discernment with that. So the last thing here, the tool. So this tool, my coach shared this with me, and I think her relationship coach, I think is Maggie Rise, I think is her name. I want to make sure we give credit where credit is due. So I think this comes from her, if I know the kind of like the back track of this properly. And I think it is so brilliant and so simple, and I use it all the time, and I use it in my personal relationship with communication, and I use it with team. And it's simply having a 1 to 10 scale and checking in with how important on a 1 to 10 scale is this? How much does this affect my business? How much will this bother me? If it is a 1 to 5, I don't need to worry about it. I don't need to talk about it. I don't need to communicate it. I don't need to be vulnerable about it. I don't need to be transparent about it. It's probably just not a big deal. If it's a 5 to 10, my job is to communicate it. And I find it just helps take the guesswork out of that discernment piece. So, and really what I use is how much is this going to affect the business, or how much is this going to bother me? There are certain things that might not really affect the business and might not be that important, but if it is going to bother me and I'm going to be sitting here worrying about it or thinking about it, that means it's like probably a 7. I need to communicate it. But if it's not really going to affect the business, or it's not really going to bother me, if it's like a 2, like on that scale, I don't need to necessarily communicate that. And I say that because one of the things we talked about is over communicating, which I think is so valuable. But there's over communicating, and then there's like just communicating all the things that doesn't serve you, it doesn't serve your team, it really doesn't serve anyone. And so I find having this tool can be so, so valuable. I think the way Maggie uses it, and I don't know, I haven't worked with her personally, but I do know she's a great relationship coach. I think the way she uses it and the way it's really used more with relationships is, how much does this bother me? So when you're in partnership, a romantic partnership, how much does this bother me on a 1 to 10 scale? If it's a 1 to 5, just sit on your hands, because it's kind of like, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's mostly small stuff. If it's a 5 to 10, that's important enough. You want to communicate. You want to be transparent about it. You want to be vulnerable about it. You want to have the hard conversations. And in a relationship, I find that's so serving, right? I use this with my fiance as well. Like if it's a 1 to 5, like just let it go. But if it's a 5 to 10, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about it. So you can take that tool, which is really great for, again, romantic relationships, friendships, and bring it into your business with your team. And I find it's just such a great gauge. It just simplifies and takes the question mark out and takes the emotionality out that can make it really hard sometimes to know where it's like we want to be a little more neutral with business and with some of the things we're talking about. I find this can really help bring in that neutrality so you can have that discernment. So again, using that 1 to 10 scale, how much does this affect my business, and or how much does this affect me, or will it bother me? 1 to 5, just don't talk about it. 5 to 10, probably something you're going to want to mention. So I hope that is helpful for you. Those are some of the things I've noticed from my personal relationships. We're borrowing from just being in relationship land, getting ready to get married. So I think everything is just a helpful lens that way as well. Just some of the mindset and approach I take with team, with my personal relationship as well, but with team in terms of partnership, and then some of those core communication skills I know you already have and you already know about, that you can take and bring into your business with your team. And of course, you're going to grow and learn and evolve as you and your team grow, learn, and evolve. But this way you can see you know so much more than you think you do. You know so much more about leadership and team communication than you think you do. And so you're not telling yourself that story that like you don't know enough, or you're not ready to hire a team, or you're not gonna be able to handle it, or you need to have some special degree. I really want you to see you already have these skills. They are transferable. You just get to apply them to business, and you get to apply them to your team. So I hope that's helpful for you. If you're watching on the replay, feel free to drop any questions you might have. And then last thought I will put out here for anyone, if you want support with your team, with your leadership, with your business overall in terms of building, growing, and scaling around the clarity, mindset, strategy, and action of making money in your business on your terms, that is what I do. I am excellent at it. I also love supporting clients with team because it's all relationships and it's all mindset, as well as the strategy piece. I would love to support you. We are currently booking for, I think we have 1 spot left for October, and then we're booking for November and December, and we have a few spots then. So we do have room for the end of the year, but the spots are filling up. So if that's something you're curious about, definitely book a discovery call with me. They do tend to go, those spots go pretty quickly. So I would say, even if you're not sure, if you've been thinking about working with me, if you've been curious, if you're sort of like, I don't know if this would be a fit or not, hop on a call with me. I promise you, if it's not a fit, I will point you in the right direction. I know a lot of brilliant coaches who might, energetically be a better fit for you. And if not, I would love to support you and work with you. So I will drop a link for that, and then I'll be back next week with another live stream topic for you. Bye, y'all.